everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Redefine Your Life with Faith and Julia. Today, we have a special guest returning with us, Miss Amina. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for
And
having me.
today we're going to be talking about stress and how to manage it.
We wanted to talk about stress today because last week, if you tuned in, you heard me talking about stress and talking about how kind of like a crisis that was formed from these other kind of events that had happened and how I navigated that situation. Today, we're going to talk about how stress can be built from the pressure of the world that we live in and feeling like we have to fit into a certain mold to be a part of that world, and whether or not these things were created from, outside influences of people around us. And I say these things like societal, pressures and whatever it is that we put on ourselves that makes us feel like we have to present or be or do certain things to be accepted and to be valued and to be, seen as something positive and in society and stuff like that can create a lot of stress on us because sometimes we don't feel like we fit into the narrative that might be built from the outside influences and then what we take on to be truths that other people think about us, how those things in society, other people's thoughts and beliefs, even though we don't have to agree with how other people think about us. I think subconsciously and a lot of time as humans, we just do. And that creates stress.
I was going to say, it doesn't even have to come from an outside source. It can simply come from comparison. And people tend to compare themselves to others, whether themselves physically or a situation that they're in, and they compare themselves to others. And that's the biggest thing you can do to hurt yourself, because everyone grows, everyone is different, and everyone looks different, everyone lives different lives, and to compare you to yourself to another person can really bring stress on yourself that you don't even realize you're creating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, it sucks because like that anxiety is something that I've struggled with my entire life. Oh my Lord, there's so many things that I haven't done because of being afraid and like making those comparisons and thinking about what other people are going to think of me. It's prevented me from showing up as my authentic self every day. And that sucks. Like, why should you let that hold you back from being who you are supposed to be, who you're meant to be, who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think something you said too about just the way that it prevents you from proceeding with your life. The comparisоnism can be so bad sometimes. And I don't know if it's because of the internet or because we have so much time to be home and reflecting on our lives and on other people's lives. And even though we know better, than to compare ourselves, I think we end up doing it because we're attached to how we think our lives should be looking at any certain moment. And when our lives don't look the way that we feel they should, when we're at a disconnect with the way that our lives look and then like the way that we see it, it causes stress. And then it causes us to compare ourselves to other people. See like, oh, well, I don't feel like I match my timeline, but like, here's another person who's 25 who like has all of these things accomplished. And then you start on that train and you start comparing your journey as if your journey could be compared to that other person.
Exactly. 100%. Your journey is your own. Everybody moves at a different pace and at a different speed, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I think that everybody's been thinking about careers specifically in comparison in that sense, because I have friends who are much better off than I am, and I have friends that I'm much better off than they are. Like, everyone's progress is their own, and I think it's ridiculous to try and compare yourself in that sense.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's easier said than done, and it's a pretty difficult process, but letting go of judgment, of your judgment, of other people's judgment, of society's judgment, of your parents or your siblings' judgment, to let that all go. And it takes time. It's not something that can be done overnight, because truthfully, it's probably something you do subconsciously. You don't even realize you're doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I think when we're stressed, or maybe it's all these other factors, maybe when you're overtired or you're thrown out of your schedule or anything where you're kind of out of your normal routine. I think as humans, we get into routines and we're very routine beings, you know, from straight up how we have to feed ourselves, and then our bodies metabolize, and then it's like a cycle of doing that over and over again. You know, just sustaining life is cyclic. So it makes sense that so is our weeks and our time and how we do things. So once you get into that, you know, you start to lose, I think, touch with, like, when you get too much into like the routine, you lose touch with what your timeline could look like. And it's normal to get caught up in the routine. But I think what's good about recognizing that there is a routineness is recognizing when you kind of get in that autopilot mode. And that, I think, is when you're focusing so much on like achieving something and like getting to a certain place to like prove something to yourself or to the people around you, or to like almost like this imposter syndrome type thing that you have created. I know we looked up, is this a good sub to get into that? Imposter syndrome, in case you don't know, we looked up a quick definition. So I guess if you go to dictionary.com and you use it, it defines imposter syndrome as the persistent inability to believe that one's success is derived or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So it's a belief, it's an intellectual belief that you create about yourself that you have not legitimately, or that you do not deserve what you have achieved, that it's been illegitimate or by chance. And it's crazy that we think that, you know, feeling like a phony and feeling like these different types of things come from our own self. And I don't know if that's us comparing, or if that's how it's like, it has to do with how our comparing to other people causes stress. Sorry,
You know, I think in that same category of thought, to replace those negative comparisons with what's already also inside of you, which is intuition. And so to hear that voice, to hear your own intuition inside of you louder than the comparison. And that's what you need to try to accomplish, because everyone has both elements inside of them. Everyone has that negative comparison, that thought inside of them, but also everyone has that gut feeling, you know, maybe I shouldn't go out today for some reason. I have a bad feeling. Or they call it mother's intuition. When a mother feels something for their child, or she knows that her child is in danger, or a doctor, when he chooses to go one route instead of another, those gut feelings to take a right instead of a left, or to skip that flight, everyone has it to one degree or another. It's how much you decide to harness it, how you decide to allow it to grow within you. And because those two voices live in the same subconscious thought, it's really hard to allow one voice to shine without the other voice trying to overshadow it.
Yeah.
I like that. So how right your mind can be about yourself, and how it kind of always like subconsciously knows. It's also thinking about, and, you know, it's in that same zone of, you know, where we focus on that and what kind of intention we bring to that is what's going to bring us back.
Absolutely. I think your intention has everything to do with anything you do.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to be like, oh, this is what I'm going here to do. But yeah, I think more than just you're knowing your whys behind your actions,
right?
And, you know, using that to kind of fuel, like when you come to the root of something, I mean, like even a decision. So like you said, going left instead of going right. That's a decision that you have to make in your mind. And in your mind, you could be like, well, I'm going left because I know I have these other based on my history of taking a left here, it's a shortcut and it's faster than taking a right. Or based on my experiences, I've had a better chance of merging into traffic if I go right instead of going left. Whichever one of those reasons, you could call it like past experiences, but if you're going with like the feeling that might not be logical, might not make perfect sense, but it's the feeling that you feel to be the true choice and that decision, that's your intuition.
Exactly.
So it's not using experiences and other things that have led you to come to a decision or a choice or make that thought connection in your mind previously, and aligning with the choice that is more like a feeling, and not even like, I guess like a feeling, it's more of like a knowing, an inner knowing that is kind of unquestionable. And you're saying to help with stress and comparisоnism, to hone into that center, that intuitive knowing, rather than the logical, where your brain can be like, well, you didn't earn this, you don't deserve this, this is not for you, you should be way more successful by now, and all these other types of fabrications that come, because unfortunately I think you have to feed yourself positive propaganda instead of the negative propaganda that we're being fed from people that don't believe in our true selves and don't support the people that, you know, have different beliefs than themselves. You know, they choose to not allow you to follow and live your life, and want to tell you how to live your life and stuff like that. I don't know if that's who you call your comparisоnism to, but you know, the expectation even that you're supposed to have like a retirement, you got something? Oh, like a plan, like the expectation that you're supposed to have a retirement plan, and you're supposed to have like all these finances, and like, this is how you're a productive member of society, is if you do X, Y, Z and stuff like that. And it's like, that's what's going to mean being productive in society. What type of number you need in your bank account to make you feel financially safe and stable is all going to be choices that only you can answer.
And it's relative
to yourself, right? And to you,
to each person.
Yeah. And your own intuition can kind of, the intuition is that inner knowing. So like, if you keep listening to that inner knowing,
it's that gut feeling
that can answer those questions for you, that isn't always logical, right? And stuff like that. And
if you take it down to a basic, like, think of back when you were taking Regents exams and you sat there and you had no idea what the answer to this question was, but you in your gut, okay, I'm just going to choose this one. That's following your intuition.
Like there's no logical
and
it's not just a guess either, because it's like a guess you don't feel good about. When you like, it's your intuition, you know. That's, I think, a good way of knowing if it's your intuition or not. Like it won't feel like a guess, it won't feel like you're guessing, you'll just kind of know.
Even though you have no idea what you're doing, you're gonna feel like you did the right thing. And it's important to do that. And I don't know if it's just because I was babysitting today and watching the second Frozen, but just do the next right thing.
I mean, isn't that what life is all about right now, is trying to navigate this world and figure out like how to be a good human, like how to survive without shitting on other people and being out for anything but that pure joy and that pureness that's coming from in here. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, that's literally what we wanted to build this entire podcast off of, is exactly that. Trying to teach people how to not be shitty, but still be true to yourself and do what's going to make you happy, and also help make the world a better place. That's like the ultimate goal.
Yes. And I think when you're chasing something, which is what maybe creates some of the comparisоnism, or created from some of the comparisоnism, is this need to like chase after something. And when we're on like a mission to like chase something, I feel like all that matters is like the steps to get there. And I think what we have to realize is that like reeling it back, like, but what you're looking for, or what you're chasing after, is probably like somewhere in your heart anyway, you know, like somewhere that you might actually just be mentally telling yourself a narrative that you have to chase something to be happy, or that you, when this happens, you'll be happy, or when that happens, you'll be happy, and not listening to maybe like what's intuitively telling you what makes you happy, what gives you What are you passionate about? What gives you joy? What gets you up in the morning?
Mhm.
What makes you want to be alive every single day? Because quite frankly, it can feel exhausting to be alive right now. And I know that's definitely a mutual feeling across the board,
Yeah.
regardless of who and where you come from. It's exhausting to be alive on the earth right now because there's just so much to take into consideration. And when we all pull back from that, I think the biggest thing to take into consideration is that we're all just trying to survive,
Mhm.
right? And we're just trying to survive
Yeah.
with joy and
Happiness and fulfillment in any way we can find it.
yeah.
And I think that this idea of always wanting to achieve more than you already have is something that doesn't go away. No matter what you gain in life, no matter what you achieve in life, you're always going to want more unless you change that mindset and be grateful for the now. Be grateful for where you are, and that ultimately there's nowhere else that you need to be but where you are.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if you sit and ask yourself, okay, I want to achieve A, B, and C. You achieve A, B, and C, and now you say, oh, I don't have D, E, or F. Okay, so you achieve D, E, and F. Okay, but now you have half of the alphabet when you didn't have any letters to begin with.
Yeah.
But you're always going to be wanting more unless you are grateful for what you have.
Yes. Gratitude. So important. Such a staple in life. If you're not thankful for what you have, how are you ever going to appreciate what else you're going to have in the future?
Amen.
That's maybe again a mindset thing and the comparisоnism thing. You know, if we are surrounded by people who constantly compare themselves to each other and do that and continue to do that, that's what we're going to feed into as well. So I think it goes back into that, like, building up your surroundings to be the environment that you're trying to live, right? Like being in network with people who are grateful and who, you know,
appreciate.
Yeah. And who fuel that positive gratitude. I mean, not even just positive. I don't want to say positive because we welcome it all, like the good and the bad, but it's the presence that we welcome.
Right.
And finding people that prioritize being present and that presence so that they're not longing for more. And
right.
The more that you're longing for is really just connecting with more people and longing to get more people to see it, like how beautiful it is to be present and to feel that that release of the need for that. And like you said, it is a constant unconscious thing, and it's a shift that you can make, but you have to choose to continue to make it every single day. It's something that can shift in your mindset, and you can be like, yes, I do want to do that. I do want to be grateful. I do want to appreciate my life. Like I want to be happy in this present moment. And then you get stuck in the routine again. Just keep reminding yourself, like, that's why we're all here trying to remind each other of this. And I think that's why,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No, please go.
Mindset work is really, really hard. And I think that a lot of people don't really put enough attention towards that, is that it really feels like work. That is working your mind and like rewiring the way that you think about things is no different than going to the gym and building muscles every day. I thank God that I was so committed to this journey and freeing myself from anxiety. Like, it took me years to do it, and that is perfectly fine. Like, someone else could have picked it up in like a month and been like, oh yeah, my anxiety's gone, all better.
Everyone's
but for
different.
Me, exactly. I don't need to make that comparison because I still arrived at the end point.
And it's going to continue to be a journey.
Exactly.
Always.
There's going to continue to be ups and downs where you feel like those things are resurfacing, but then you remind yourself that you get to choose the next step. You get to choose where the next step is. Is the next step left? Is the next step right? What do I want to choose? What do I feel good about? What do I know the choice is going to be? And I think that takes away some of the stress, is when you know that when you believe that you already know, when you believe that you already have that intuitive answer, right? And that takes a lot of those choices that might seem very daunting.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's a lot of work, right? It might seem like a lot of work. It might be kind of difficult to take a step to the left, even though you know it's the right choice. You're still like, yeah, but there's no traffic and I can go right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
Mhm.
continuing to, I think, see the positive change that comes out of that, or the projection of change that comes out of your choices, can be effective too. We talked a little bit about how doing it for each other is important. So like,
Mhm.
I think the community aspect of that and like the accountability aspect of that, I know personally I've spent as much time as I've spent building the mindset for myself, I've also spent building a foundation of community around myself to support that mindset as well. So if you're
Yeah.
struggling to
Mhm.
feel like good about the choices and you're not really seeing a whole lot of the results right away, like all I have to say is just like keep trying and like keep going, because as soon as you hit that certain click where you have built the foundation, like foundation is a lot of work. It takes time. Sometimes you don't have all of the things in the order and it doesn't work out the way you want it to, and it might collapse and you might have to start over.
Mhm.
Like how hard is that, when your foundation of people that you surround, like you need to start over, but sometimes that's like shedding a new skin
Exactly.
and getting
Yeah.
back on the ball and continuing to find the things that you're passionate about. And I think that's kind of like, maybe that's part of letting go of some of the comparisоnism too, is not even comparing old versions of yourself to expect that each evolution and each like version of yourself that comes
Mhm.
out of it is going to look prettier and prettier and prettier, like, so to speak, like it's going to look more put together each time. Like, sure, it will, but there can also be moments where you have a tear in that skin and that imperfection or whatever, and that's what you could focus on, is the fact that you had to step back, or like this imperfection to your so-called perfect way of being present and being mindful and being seen as a good person or whatever. And instead you look at it for another opportunity to shed and to learn and to grow and to keep going and to keep
Absolutely.
growing.
That's beautiful.
Mm,
I like that.
yeah.
What you were saying about community, though, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit more, because like the people that you surround yourself with, it makes such a difference in your life. Like the reason that I was able to overcome my anxiety finally in the end was down to my community. I uprooted my whole life and I moved, and all the people that I surrounded myself with after I moved were all such bright, happy, beautiful, wonderful people. And I remember meeting Julia for the first time, and I was like, I have a really weird question for you, and I don't know if it's going to come across weird or not, but like, how do you just show up and be yourself? And she's like, what do you mean? And with Julia's help, she helped me learn how to be myself by loving myself. And that made my anxiety go away. Like someone who locked their self in a house for months. Like I never would have pictured myself here. Thank God.
Aw, that's really beautiful.
Well, I mean, you hold me accountable on the daily with the things that, it might sound like advice that you needed to hear, but a lot of the time I say it to you so that you can spit it back at me, because how much do we suck at taking our own advice?
Oh, so we suck.
Right? Like,
Oh,
as much
yeah.
as that's why I think the imposter syndrome comes in for me really hard, at least
Right.
recently, with that feeling like I don't deserve it, is because if I still struggle with anxiety and depression, and I still struggle with waking up sometimes each day, like those types of things that you're trying to help other
Yeah.
people get through, and you still struggle with them yourself, it's like,
It makes you feel like an imposter, but you're not.
but you're not, you're human.
Mhm,
And you need to be reminded
exactly.
as well. And that's why we need to keep helping each other and keep teaching each other and keep being mirrors for each other,
Mhm.
to bounce ideas back and forth off
Right.
of. And finding a community of people, or even just one person, like
Yeah.
it starts with two people, right? A community, I feel like,
Yeah.
can start with two people.
Mhm.
And
Sometimes
that's what we're
all
trying
it
to do
takes.
here.
Yeah.
Right? Aw.
Mhm.
Sometimes that is all it takes.
Yes.
And two people to keep coming back to, because when you keep coming back, you can keep making that choice to, the energy that you bring to each other. Sometimes, you can have friends, and I have a friend, well, I don't really, whatever, acquaintance, I'll say, but would talk about like drama and stuff. And like, I never used to call myself like a person that like talk about drama, but I would find myself, this was like at work, I would want to hear about like all these other different things. And then I started to realize like why, and it was like this inclusion and like feeling a part of something and stuff like that. So like, as great as it is to like water yourself down or kind of pretend to fit in or pretend to be like what other people are, because you want to feel connected to people and you want to have those special relationships with people, just keep in mind, if you hang out with that type of energy that doesn't align with you, it's going to change you, right? Yeah, you're going to start being like that. And then eventually that is going to become who you are. So you have to seek out and make relationships with the people that you want to align with and be like, and like mindset wise be like physically be like it's all about spreading that influence in the best way, right?
Absolutely.
And like choosing how you're influenced. Yeah, we can all say that, oh, I'm like influenced and you're doing things and the media is putting things in my brain and yada, yada, yada. And this was like a realization I had the other day. And I'm like, yeah, but I can choose to be influenced by that. Or I can choose to just allow for it to solidify my beliefs in what I do believe, or what I, like the more knowledge you gain, it's not going to necessarily change you unless you choose to keep choosing that. Choose to keep aligning with that and choose to keep putting that in your life. Like what we focus on is what we create in our lives. And that is like, because that's what you're going to seek. What you think about is what you're going to seek too. So that's, I think, why we rely so heavily on other people when you don't even realize, you call a friend and you're like, wow, I didn't really realize how much I needed to talk.
Yeah.
I think your intuition did.
I think you followed your intuition.
Yeah. Something in your gut was like, I got to call my friend today because I'm not okay. And then lo and behold, you're fine, because you find out that was exactly what you needed.
Yeah.
Full circle. Beautiful.
And then, like, I think letting go of the pressure of comparing yourself and, like you said, loving yourself instead, and fully accepting that who you are, isn't something that does need to be changed, because there are people out there who are, just as weird as you are, and take us for example, but and have these doubts and have different beliefs. And the internet, instead of it being a toxic place where we can be influenced by those types of things, we can actually find the people. We can look for and seek out the energy that we're looking for. Sometimes that can be hard because people can be fake on the internet. But that's where the intuition, I think, comes in, and you'll be able to find the people. You'll kind of just know, you'll see somebody's face and you'll be like, oh my gosh, like there's something about their face. Like, I feel like I know this person. And like, then it'll just like, it'll work itself out. And you just kind of have to trust that. And, believing that has helped a lot of my life, and in the believing that I know that I have the knowing, and it can be kind of hard. Maybe that's where the mindset work comes in.
Ultimately, I think it's learning to love yourself the way that you love others. Because I think that's the hardest thing for us to do, is to love ourselves, to respect ourselves, and to give us the credit that we give others. The people who have imposter syndrome are able to give others that credit without giving it to themselves. And ultimately learning how to love yourself, to give yourself compassion, to boost your own self-esteem, the way you view about yourself, and say nice things about yourself the way that you'd say nice things about someone else.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. It's like when you think about your friends and you're like, well, my friend's a small business person, like how could they be doing it? And you admire them for their success, and you know like that they deserve that and that they've worked for that and like all these things, but you can't feel that for yourself. Yes.
It's really important to check in. And I've been doing that a lot this month with the new year, just kind of reminding myself where I was last year and how much has changed in just 1 year, and how much I accomplished. Like I moved, I bought a car, like I got a cat, all in a year. And I mean, even more than that, those are just the things that come to the top of my head. It's important to give yourself credit for what you've accomplished and what you've done, because when you're living it every day, it's hard to see that. You're too close to the forest to see the trees that you planted. And it's at that point when you can thank yourself when you can appreciate yourself, when you can admire yourself and love yourself, you lose that sense of imposter syndrome, because at that point you're just as worthy as everyone else.
Tingles.
So good. Such good things. And you know what? Like, comparison isn't all bad either. It's just like
No.
negative comparisons. Sometimes it's
Exactly.
necessary to compare yourself to
100%.
other things. Like, comparing yourself to yourself is one of the best ways to, like what you just said, look back at how far you have come in life, how
Yes.
much progress that you have made. Think about the fact that you just existed for a whole nother year. Like, even just breathing is hard sometimes, guys. Like, give yourself more credit.
Yes. And I even
Mhm.
love if you can admire your friends and have that appreciation and have that respect for your friends. And then instead of starting to compare yourself, you say, I can do this too. If she can do it, I can do it. I mean, that shift even in of itself is like, whoa.
Admiration, not comparison.
If we're going to compare.
Yes. Exactly. And it's good to set goals. It's good to admire people in that way and want to emulate them in a positive way, instead of using comparison to tear yourself down. Use it to build you up. Yes, compare, because clearly this is going to look better than that. It depends, relative to whose eye it is, but that's what comparison does. It allows us to make things look better. If you're making a magazine, right? If you're designing an outfit, something's going to look better than something else. And that kind of comparison is positive, because in that way you're making and creating something beautiful. You're not excluding something, but making something.
Yeah.
Out of comparison,
You're building. Yeah. You're building. Did you say it's not comparison? It's inspiration?
Admiration.
I love that. And admiration, I think, leads to inspiration. And
absolutely.
Right. And it's just like comparisоnism. Instead of comparisоnism, how about like inspirationism or some shit?
The biggest compliment you can give someone is to copy them.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Biggest form of flattery is comparison. And if you think of little kids, right? You're coloring and, oh, wow, that flower looks pretty as red. I'm going to make my flower red too. Okay, that's a huge compliment, right? So I think too, it's important to learn from each other. Make sure we straighten each other's crowns instead of saying, oh, your crown is different than mine. Well, okay, that's a given. We're all going to be different. So kind of setting the differences aside and using comparison to grow together as a unit and separately individually is a really beautiful process. It's a process though.
And it's a choice. Every day. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes. You said so much good there. I'm still processing.
I know. I'm like, man, what do I even say? That was so good.
Oh, that was so good.
But like, this is a perfect example. Like us sitting here admiring everything that Amina just said and expanding on it and thinking of other things to say to build off of it. Like, that's a beautiful example right there.
And honestly, what I had to say was built off of what both of you had to say.
Yes.
So, full circle.
Right. And even this podcast, like, I kind of want to shout out my friend Courtney, and she does the Journey to Limitless podcast. Check it out on Spotify and all the fun platforms. And my friend Megan, she just created a podcast too, the Vibrant Minds, I believe, podcast, the Vibrant Mind. I'm not sure if it's an S, but also can be found on Spotify. And like, as much as it was a comparisоnism in my mind when I first started, not even just like to them, I mean to all podcasts, like comparing yourself to these big people that have been doing it for so long. And like my friends were actually the reason I started it, because I thought if they can do it, so can I. I was comparing myself to these big, like successful, already have so many of followings and stuff like that type podcasts, and being like, how could I even like start to like get there? And then just seeing like those micro steps and seeing your friends and like the people around you getting after it, getting out there, doing it, taking those little bits of that little bit of movement to get themselves
Yeah.
rolling. And
Everyone
like,
starts somewhere.
and taking that little wind and watching them go and just using it as your ammunition because you know they want you down there with them.
Yeah.
Or I should say up there.
Up there. Onward and upward.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. I love listening to your podcasts, and I am so grateful to be a guest on it again. I love where our discussions go and the endless possibilities of discussions that we could have.
Oh my gosh, yes. And we love
Well,
to have
thank you, Amina.
Mhm.
Yes,
I
thank
know we'll
you.
probably have you on again sometime soon.
I look forward to it.
Till next time.
Ta-ta
guys.
for now.